Hi everyone, welcome to Maximum Attack Rallying. You find me in the car. It's been a while since we've done a car video, but today is a car video. So it's all kicking off in the WRC again. We have drivers protesting against the FIA in the wake of the €10,000 fine that was given to Adrian Formeau at the end of Rally Sweden. So there is lots to talk about there, but before we get to that, I have two things that I need to tell you. The first is that I know I haven't done a proper Safari Rally Kenya preview / prediction. Mohammed Hosni and Phil Taylor both called me out for that, so thank you, chaps. Let's do a quick prediction. I know this is slightly ridiculous because by the time this video goes out, we will have had the first two stages. For some reason, we have two stages running on Thursday this year instead of the usual one spectator stage. But I'm going to do a little prediction and hopefully no one will crash or break down, so it will hold true. So predictions. I think Kalle Rovanperä is going to overcome his early season woes to win the rally. I think Takamoto Katsuta, who is a strong Safari driver, will finish second, and I think Thierry Neuville will finish third. That is my prediction. That said, I would quite like to see Hyundai break their bad run in Kenya. It would be nice to see them win the rally, just to mix things up a little bit. And it would also be nice, I think, to see Tanak win the rally and get his championship kicked off. So those are my predictions. That said, who knows? Like I said, we've got two stages that will have run by the time this goes out, between me recording it and it going live. So perhaps everyone's crashed and Jordan Serdaridis is leading the rally. Who knows? The second thing that I need to tell you is that you need to check out the Maximum Attack Rallying merch store. Do go and have a look and buy yourself a t-shirt, a sticker, a hat, or something else. That would be very, very helpful indeed. So I would appreciate you looking at that. However, let us get back to the thorny issue of swearing and this long-running saga. So I made a video about this a couple of weeks ago. I'll put the link in the description to that so you can get an idea of the full story of this. But as I said, basically, Adrian Formeau was given a €10,000 fine plus a 20,000 suspended fine for swearing in his post-Power Stage interview in Sweden. And after a 5-week break since then, as we go into this week's Safari Rally, it looks like things are happening, and as shakedown got underway, it quickly became clear that the drivers had decided to make a stand against the FIA. So Elfyn Evans and Thierry Neuville gave their comments at the end of the shakedown stage in their native languages, in Welsh and French. So that was interesting. Some drivers didn't say anything at all. Kalle Rovanperä and Tanak did speak, however, but that was only to clarify that we wouldn't really be hearing anything from them this weekend in light of this boycott of stage end interviews. So that looks like the direction that we're going. Following shakedown, a statement was issued by the World Rally Drivers Alliance. Let me read that for you from my phone. So it said, "We all agree to keep rudeness at the microphone to a minimum. At the same time, it is necessary to maintain a certain freedom of expression and to keep emotions alive while drivers don't need to be afraid of getting punished in any way. We have asked the president of the FIA for some positive changes in the rules to help us achieve this goal. For the reasons explained in our statement, it is impossible for us to guarantee that we, drivers and co-drivers, will be able to follow these rules perfectly and systematically. This is why we, WRC members, are now taking the responsible decision to remain silent at the end of the interviews or to answer in our mother tongue. In the own interest of our sport, such an action is unfortunately needed, and we apologise to all the rally fans, even though we know they support us in this." So that could have been it, couldn't it? It could have just been that we had no proper stage end interviews this weekend, and this saga would have continued to run and run. However, we got another little piece of news. So it came out yesterday after shakedown that the FIA has responded to WRDA's request for an interview, and it has said that it is willing to meet with drivers to discuss this issue after Rally Kenya. I think the timing of that email is certainly interesting, isn't it? Gus Greensmith told dirtfish.com in a media zone that email was received 10 minutes before shakedown started. I mean, if that's true, it's hard not to feel that this was a reaction from the FIA and that they had got wind of this this stage end interview boycott and decided that they needed to take some kind of action to try and stem the tide. I mean, it doesn't seem to have done much to impress the drivers so far in the interviews that I've seen. Obviously, Gus seemed a little bit sceptical of the timing of it, and the drivers that commented, including Thierry Neuville, said that they were disappointed that it had taken so long for this response to be received. I think it's important to say, isn't it, that this is making life very difficult for the promoter. They rely heavily on the stage end interviews to get their content and to put their package together for Rally TV. So it's very, very difficult for them, and it looks like this is going to continue. I haven't seen anything so far as I record this suggesting that the stage end interviews will go ahead. It looks like the drivers are going to stick to their words and stick to their lack of words, and continue with the boycott for this weekend. Maybe that will change. Maybe we'll see a slight softening if there's some dialogue behind the scenes. But as I said, as I record this, the boycott will continue. I think in the midst of this, however, you have to feel a little bit sorry for the rally organisers. You know, they're not behind this. The team behind Safari Rally have nothing to do with this. This is something that's very much come from the FIA, and I think it's a shame for the rally. You know, we should be enjoying one of the toughest rallies on the calendar, but we've been distracted by this ongoing issue and these ongoing discussions and this boycott, which is going to impact them. As I said, it's going to impact the promoter. So I think it's a shame from that perspective. You know, we're not talking about the rally as much as we could. We are instead talking about this issue, this thing. That said, I totally understand where the drivers are coming from. You know, they don't like the position that they have been put into, and I think they feel that they have no choice. You know, it's unreasonable to expect them to fully control themselves in stage end interviews. So I totally get it. I am totally behind them. I think this is absolutely the right move. I think they have to send a message to the FIA, and it seems that by doing this, that message has worked because they have now at least received some response. I really hope that the FIA see some sense and we can have some kind of constructive discussion about this and find a sensible way forward. I've said this before, you know, we don't want needless bad language, you know, in media zones and that kind of thing. We don't want people swearing just because, you know, the drivers do have to be sensible with their choice of language. But, you know, stage end interviews are a different ballgame. They are, I'm not going to say they're unique because we have team radio in F1, for example. We are seeing the drivers in the midst of the action. And when you are in that high pressure, high adrenaline, high emotion environment, you can't expect to stifle the use of language. You can't expect people to react perfectly as if they're in a pre-planned, pre-organized interview. It just doesn't work like that. I thought Oyt Tanak actually put it very well. He did an interview in the media zone yesterday with dirtfish.com, and he was talking about the role model thing. You know, the FIA have talked, when they've been talking about these rules, they've said how the drivers should be role models and how they need to act appropriately. And he put it very well. He said, well, if we're going to act like a role model, we should be ourselves. We shouldn't change who we are. And I thought that's absolutely true, isn't it? You know, we have to recognise what this is. You know, these situations, as I said, are highly emotional. There's adrenaline, and I think it would be worse in a way for drivers to disguise who they are and try and hide their emotions and hide what they're going through. That isn't the way to inspire people. If you want to inspire people and show people the right way to act, yes, you don't want people shouting and swearing and things, but you know, we also have to show that these drivers are human beings. There's a difference between being a role model and being a robot or a public relations machine, and that isn't what we want either. And sport is about human connection. I know, you know, we love watching cars go fast, we love the noise and all that stuff, but sport attracts people because of the human stories. You know, we root for people, we want people to win, we want people to be successful, and we develop that connection by seeing emotion. You know, people loved Colin McRae, yes, partly because he was a spectacular driver, but also because he said what he thought and he wasn't afraid to share his feelings and show emotion. And that is true of all great sports people, you know, whatever field they're in. You know, we are drawn to people that we can connect with. So I think you need to maintain that humanity, and humanity is imperfect. So as I said, I'm not saying that swearing is acceptable everywhere. If you're in a media zone and you've had time to calm down, you've done a 100-kilometre road section, you've been with the team, with the PR team, at that point, you should relax and be in a place where you can speak without swearing. But when you've just driven a 30k stage and you've got a puncture or you've been off or something's happened or you had a bad time, you're not always going to behave yourself. And I think it's ridiculous for the FIA to keep obsessing over this and trying to impose strange rules that don't really fit with reality. So I really hope that we can find a way forward, and that the FIA realise that they're not just annoying the drivers, they're actually harming the sport. You know, I think as I've talked a lot about human connection in the last couple of minutes, haven't I? That is what it's all about. By trying to stifle that and trying to turn motorsport and the drivers into these robots who don't say what they think, you're actually harming yourself, aren't you? They're harming themselves, they're harming the sport, and that is completely ridiculous. So that is where we are at. We will see what happens in the coming days. Do let me know what you think. I suspect that most of you will be in support of the drivers, just as I am. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens in the coming days after the event, and whether there is any news from this FIA meeting. So I'm going to wrap this one up there. As always, do like and subscribe. And as I said, let me know what you think. I don't think we've heard the end of this one though, have we? So this is going to run and run, I think. So let's leave it there. Enjoy the rally. I promise I will do a wrap up next week of the event and see if my predictions came true. So look out for that, and I will see you next time.